Sitting at my desk, I found myself drifting back through the 30 years since Ella and I first tied the knot, memories of our honeymoon flooding my mind. I thought about those unforgettable days in Hawaii, and a warm mix of nostalgia and gratitude filled me. That trip was one of those magical chapters in life that you carry with you forever. From the moment we arrived, it was like stepping into a dream world, a complete escape from our everyday routines, a kind of peacefulness I still find hard to put into words. Walking along Waikiki Beach, feeling the sand between our toes and hearing the gentle rush of the waves, we were wrapped up in beauty. The air was heavy with the scent of plumeria, a sweet reminder of the love and tranquility surrounding us. It wasn't just the stunning scenery that made our honeymoon so memorable. It was the experiences we shared together. Trekking through lush jungles and uncovering hidden waterfalls felt like discovering Mother Nature's secrets. We were in awe, marveling at the incredible power and beauty of our surroundings. And our cliffside retreat in Maui, well, it offered views that seemed to go on forever. Each evening, the sunsets painted the sky in vibrant hues, and as we held each other, we were overcome with love and devotion. Our nights felt like a romantic symphony. We had candlelit dinners right on the beach under the stars, savoring fresh seafood and local delicacies. What made it truly magical, though, was the love that sparkled in Ella's eyes. Hawaii wasn't just a destination. It became the heart of our love story, a place that captured moments and dreams we would share forever. Looking back now, I realize how deeply that trip enriched our relationship. It rekindled our love and strengthened our bond, filling us with joy and a sense of serenity that I still carry. Lost in these thoughts, I didn't even notice my secretary walk in until she interrupted me, smiling. "Liam, what's got you so happy lately? Did you win the lottery?" she teased. It dawned on me then. I'd been grinning, feeling genuinely happy and lighthearted for weeks. I told her that Ella had been especially loving and attentive lately, making me feel appreciated in a way I hadn't in years. It was like a second honeymoon, and I was eager to spend even more time with her, acting like a smitten teenager all over again. I didn't want this newfound happiness to fade. While Ella and I have always had a strong marriage, 30 years can turn excitement into routine. But lately, she'd been unusually affectionate, seeking intimacy nearly every night, bringing back parts of our relationship we hadn't explored in years. I never once questioned her affections or wondered if there was anything else behind them. Beyond just rekindling our marriage, I decided to surprise Ella with a romantic evening. Leaving work early with a smile on my face, I picked up 24 roses, her favorite wine, and some chocolate-covered cherries. Tonight, I'd show her how much she meant to me, and surprise her with tickets for a 7-night cruise to celebrate our enduring love. When I got home, I went through the garage, up the steps into the kitchen, expecting to find Ella. Instead, I saw our daughter, Chloe, sitting at the table. I smiled, kissed her on the forehead, and asked, "Hey, baby, where's your mom?" 2 weeks earlier, Chloe had sat down with Ella for a private heart-to-heart. "Mom, I know you love Dad," Chloe said gently, "but you've said yourself that you're longing for something a little different, something you feel you need. Dad loves you, and I really think he'll understand. He'd let you have this one-time experience." Ella looked at her uncertainly. "I love your dad more than anything, Chloe. I don't want to hurt him. I can't imagine just telling him that I'm going on a date with another man. It feels impossible." "Mom, let me handle it," Chloe offered. "Ethan will be waiting for you at the restaurant at 7 p.m., so just be ready to leave by 6 o'clock. When Dad gets home, I'll explain everything to him." Ella sighed. "I agreed to this date, but I have serious doubts. It just feels wrong. How am I supposed to look your father in the eye afterward, knowing I went out with someone else?" Chloe put a reassuring hand on her mom's shoulder. "Just show Dad how much you love him for the next 2 weeks. Give him all your attention and affection. Let him know he has nothing to worry about. Trust me, he'll understand it's not about love. It's just about a bit of fun and a new experience." Ella hesitated but nodded slowly. "Maybe you're right. It's just one night, one date. It doesn't mean I'm leaving your father or falling in love with someone else. Exactly. Chloe smiled. Rock Dad's world. Remind him how much you love him. And when I explain it to him that evening, he'll welcome you back with open arms. He's crazy about you, Mom. And he'd do anything for you. Ella gave a slight smile, though her face was still lined with worry. You're right, Chloe. Your dad is incredible. I'll make sure he knows how much I appreciate him over these next few weeks. And when I get back from this one night out, I'll do everything I can to make him feel like the happiest man in the world. That's all you need to do, Mom. Just remind him how loved he is, Chloe said, standing to leave. Now, I've got to get home to make dinner for Jake. Oh, give him my love. And remind him that I'm waiting on those grandbabies, Ella laughed. Soon, Mom, Chloe replied, laughing. We're planning to start trying in a few months. After Chloe left, Ella retreated to her art studio behind the house, letting herself get lost in her latest painting project. Though her mind wandered, torn between her excitement for a new experience and guilt over her decision, Ella struggled to find her creative spark, burdened by the thought of being with another man. But Chloe's advice echoed in her mind, and suddenly her brushes began to dance on the canvas. Vibrant colors and emotive landscapes sprang to life, and Ella felt a surge of confidence, as if she were finally doing something right for herself. Alone in her studio, she felt a wave of calm. Liam might be upset at first, she thought, but I know I can make him understand how much I love and adore him. He's been an amazing husband and father, and I'll show him that. That evening, Ella set her plan in motion, hoping to shower Liam with all the affection she'd felt building up inside. After her shower, she put on his favorite baby doll nightgown, styled her hair, and added a touch of makeup. When he walked in the door, she greeted him warmly, dressed just for him. Guiding him toward the bedroom, she undressed him slowly, surprising him with a level of passion and intimacy they hadn't shared in years. This is the best welcome home I've had in ages, Liam said, smiling, a look of deep contentment on his face. What's the occasion? I just wanted to remind you of how special you are to me and how much I love you, she said softly, her eyes meeting his. Did you enjoy it? I did. It's been so long. I forgot how much I missed this, he replied, his face glowing. They fell onto the bed together, sharing deep kisses and lingering touches, savoring a closeness that had been missing. Ella felt a warmth and happiness rise within her, wondering why she hadn't done this sooner. Over the next few weeks, their connection grew stronger, and Liam became a brighter, happier man, always smiling and laughing, showering her with his own affection. Ella felt herself in a better place than she'd been in a long time, and the more she reflected on it, the more she began to question her plans with Ethan. When she brought it up to Chloe, Ella hesitated. Honey, things with your dad have been amazing lately. Maybe I don't need to go through with this after all. Chloe thought for a moment. This is wonderful, Mom, and I love that things are great with Dad. But you don't have to cancel anything now. Just enjoy these next 2 weeks with him and see where it leads. You can always decide last minute if you want to cancel. But remember, this opportunity might not come around again. Ella nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. Remind me, though, about Ethan's story. I know he's your friend's father, but what's his situation again? Of course, Mom, Chloe said. His wife, Anna, was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor a few years ago. He took time off to care for her until she passed away. She was his world, and after her death, he was completely devastated. He became withdrawn, buried himself in work, and really struggled with the idea of being with anyone else. When my friend and I suggested he think about dating again, he admitted he didn't even know where to start. Chloe continued, explaining Ethan's deep admiration for her mother and his wish for companionship. Mom, he thinks you're wonderful and would really love to spend time with you. I'll give him your number, and you two can set something up. He's about 10 years younger, but I know you'd get along well. He just needs someone to talk to, someone he can connect with. I really believe you could be good for each other. The next day, Ella's phone rang, and it was Ethan. Their conversation was warm and easy, and when he complimented her, saying how much he looked forward to meeting, she felt a flutter of excitement, a thrill she hadn't felt in years. His flattering words gave her butterflies, and before she knew it, she'd agreed to meet him. When he offered to pick her up, she insisted on meeting him at the restaurant instead. They began texting daily, the exchanges becoming increasingly playful as the date approached. By the time their meeting arrived, her messages wouldn't have passed the simplest test of loyalty. Though she was thrilled about the upcoming date, she didn't want to neglect Liam. She poured even more effort into their evenings together, rekindling their intimacy. Liam couldn't help but smile every day, feeling like he was living in a second honeymoon, while Ella, too, walked around with a spark she hadn't felt in years. The new level of connection they were sharing exceeded all her expectations. I adored my daughter. Chloe was the most beautiful young woman, and I couldn't have been prouder of the person she'd become. I sometimes wished I'd been able to spend more time with her as she was growing up, but I'd always done my best to provide a good life for her and her mother. When I walked into the kitchen and saw her sitting there, I smiled in surprise. "Sweetheart, what are you doing here? And where's your mom?" I set down the roses, wine, and box of chocolates, and reached into my jacket pocket. "I've got a special surprise planned for your mom tonight," I said, smiling as I pulled out travel tickets. "I'm taking her on a 7-day cruise. Don't say anything when she gets here. I want to surprise her." Hearing her call me Daddy always took me back to when she was a little girl sitting on my lap. But today something seemed off. There were tears welling in her eyes, and she looked worried and out of breath. "Dad," she started, her voice unsteady, "we need to talk." A tear slipped down her cheek. I felt a pang of concern. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Is something the matter with Mom?" "No, Dad, Mom's fine. Please, sit down so I can explain," Chloe said softly, clearly struggling with her emotions. She hesitated, then took a shaky breath. "Dad, you know how much Mom loves you, and she's told me how wonderful things have been between you two lately." "Yes," I replied, starting to feel uneasy. "I love her too, Chloe. That's why I planned this special evening for her, to show her how much she means to me." But seeing the tears in her eyes, I realized her news wasn't what I'd expected. "I'm really sorry, Daddy," she said, her voice breaking. "But Mom went out with another man tonight." I sat in stunned silence, her words hitting me like a punch to the gut. I could feel anger beginning to stir inside me as I processed her words. "Chloe, what are you saying? Where's your mother?" I demanded, my voice rising with frustration. "Daddy, Mom loves you so much," Chloe said, trying to steady her voice. "Please don't take this the wrong way. She just wanted something different in her life, just once, after 30 years of marriage. She couldn't tell you herself, so I offered to be the one to break it to you. It's just one night. She'll be back tomorrow." "Is this some kind of sick joke?" I replied, my voice sharp with disbelief. "Your mother would never betray me like this. We've been so close, so connected. This can't be real." Chloe's eyes filled with tears. "She does love you, Dad. She just felt like she needed something new, something different. She thought it might even make her love for you stronger, that you'd understand." I stared at her, the weight of betrayal crushing me. "Chloe, why are you involved in this? Your mother had no right to drag you into it. I should be talking to her, not you. How did she even get you involved in something like this?" Chloe looked down, clearly uncomfortable. "Dad, Mom and I have always been close. We talk about everything. She told me things had slowed down between you two, that she didn't feel the same spark anymore. My friend's dad lost his wife a few years ago, and he's been really lonely. Mom just wanted one night just to feel a little excitement again. So I introduced them." I shot up out of my chair, knocking it over in the process. "Are you serious? You set your own mother up on a date with another man? Is that really what you're telling me?" Chloe lowered her head, not meeting my gaze. She sat silently, guilt and shame written all over her face. Meanwhile, I began pacing back and forth across the kitchen, barely able to comprehend the situation. Finally, I stopped, towering over her. "Damn it, Chloe, answer me," I yelled, my voice shaking with anger. "Did you arrange this? Did you actually send my wife, your mother, on a date with your friend's father. Chloe flinched at my outburst. I'm really sorry, Dad, she whispered. Yes, I did. It sounds terrible when you say it like that, but I was trying to help a friend. I didn't mean for it to hurt you. Help a friend? I snapped, incredulous. What about me, Chloe? What about our family? How could you do this? I saw Chloe's face crumple under my anger, but I was too furious to hold back. Where is she now? I demanded. And why did you say she won't be back until tomorrow? She's at a restaurant, Chloe stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know which one. And yes, they're spending the night together. Just this once. She'll be back tomorrow, Dad. She loves you. She's been telling me how much but I couldn't listen anymore. My mind was a whirlwind of hurt, betrayal, and anger as I processed what she was telling me. For the past 2 weeks, she's been telling me how much she loves you and doesn't want you to be hurt. Chloe pleaded through her tears. It's just one night, Dad. She thought you'd understand, that you'd let her have this one chance. So that's it, I replied, feeling my heart harden. I thought her affection these last 2 weeks was real, that it was genuine. But you're saying it was all just to ease her guilt. I shook my head. Well, this isn't going to end well. I can promise you that. Tears streamed down Chloe's face as she struggled to explain. Dad, it's not like that. She never meant to hurt you. She just wanted to show you how much she loves you. Can't you give her just this one night? She can't imagine life without you. She talks about your retirement, about you both spending time with your grandkids one day. Jake and I plan to have kids. Dad, we need you both. I laughed bitterly. Ironic, isn't it? That dream ended the moment she decided to go out with someone else. So tell me, who is this man? He's my friend Anna's dad, she said softly. He's really nice, and I think you'd actually like him. Oh, fantastic. So I'm supposed to be friends with the man dating my wife? Maybe we can be drinking buddies, and I'll just let him borrow your mom on weekends. Is that what you want? Chloe slumped back into her chair, my words hitting her like a blow. After a few more moments of pacing, I managed to collect myself. I turned to my daughter, my voice filled with venom and hurt. Listen to me, Chloe. I need time to process what you and your mother have done. Don't call me, don't text me. Your betrayal is unforgivable. You're dead to me now. I'm no longer your father, and you're no longer my daughter. Get out of my house and don't ever speak to me again. Chloe's face crumpled, and she began to sob openly, her head buried in her hands. Dad, please don't say that. I love you, and I want to stay here tonight. Mom and I thought I'd stay with you. We didn't want you to be alone tonight. Her words only deepened my anger. The disrespect you've shown makes me question if you ever respected me at all. I've worked tirelessly to provide for you and your mother, and this is what I get in return? Turns out I was just a meal ticket to the both of you. I'm not sure either of you ever really loved me. Amid her sobs, Chloe tried one last plea. Dad, I love you. Please just reconsider. Let Mom explain everything tomorrow. You've had 30 wonderful years together, and I know you love her. Give her this one night and she'll be grateful. She'll never leave you. Daddy, she loves you. I took a deep, steadying breath. She can have whatever she wants, but she'll never have me again. Forgiveness is beyond me now. Everyone involved will face the consequences, including the man who took my wife. Now go, Chloe. You've shown your true colors. You still have your mother. Nothing changes for you, Chloe. To me, you're no longer my daughter. Leave, I said, my voice cold. With tears streaming down her face, Chloe fled the house, the agony evident in her every step. She hadn't expected this reaction. Never imagined her father's love could feel so distant, so severed. The weight of her decisions crashed over her, and she suddenly wondered if she'd crossed a line in supporting her mother's plan. She knew I loved them both, but my fury was undeniable. All she could do now was pray that, someday, I'd forgive her. The moment she left, I reached for my phone and dialed Ella's number. It went straight to voicemail. I left message after message, begging her to call back, to come home. But even after a few stiff drinks, my phone was silent. Desperate, I resorted to texting, sending the same plea over and over. Still, no response. By 2 a.m., it hit me. She wasn't coming back. She wasn't even going to answer my calls. Exhausted, I slumped on the couch, staring blankly at the TV as the bleak news droned on. My world felt like it was collapsing in on itself. 30 years of marriage flashed through my mind. The highs, the lows, the shared milestones, the once passionate intimacy that had faded into routine. Our love life had grown predictable, but I'd never thought it lacking. We always said, "I love you" each day, embraced each other after making love, drifted off together, and rarely argued. Yet now all of it felt hollow, stripped of meaning. I looked out at the art studio I'd built for Ella years ago, her sanctuary where she'd poured her creativity for nearly 2 decades. It struck me painfully that it might have meant more to her than I did. I'd always been proud of her achievements, willing to step aside to let her shine. But after hearing from Chloe that Ella had turned to another man without ever telling me she felt unfulfilled, it was like a knife to the heart. She'd confided her discontent to our daughter, of all people, instead of facing me. The anger and humiliation surged, almost unbearable. I thought about everything I'd worked for, this home, this life, and the property I'd inherited from my grandfather, all in my name. Fueled by alcohol and bitterness, I started plotting ways to make her feel the pain she'd inflicted on me. Looking back at the studio, a wave of renewed strength washed over me. Whether it was from the alcohol or pure hurt, I felt a surge of energy, a desperate need to take action. I headed to the bedroom and began gathering all of Ella's belongings. I made countless trips, moving everything to the studio. Her shoes, clothes, jewelry, every item I could find. I piled it all in the center of the room. Then I gathered every photo album, including our wedding pictures, and placed them on top of the heap. I even climbed up to the attic to retrieve anything of sentimental value. Her wedding dress, the baby clothes we'd saved. I continued adding to the pile, pulling down her cherished photos from the walls and tossing them onto the heap. Sculptures, sketches, every keepsake she'd once treasured, now reduced to kindling. By 5 a.m., I felt the tension like a weight in my chest. I told myself I'd wait until 6 a.m., giving her one last chance to come home or respond to my messages. If I heard nothing, then everything would go up in flames. At 5:30, I walked to the garage and grabbed a 20-liter gasoline can. The studio waited, quiet and full of shadows, every corner packed with reminders of the life we'd built together. I stood there, giving her those last few minutes, but as the clock struck 6:05, my last thread of hope snapped. I poured gasoline across the studio floor, over the piles of her things, splashing it along the walls. After a moment of hesitation, I struck a match and tossed it onto the mound. Flames erupted instantly, devouring everything in their path, climbing higher with every passing second. The studio, the place she'd always loved more than she loved me, was engulfed, lighting up the early morning as the fire spread rapidly. The smell of burning wood and gasoline filled the air, and in seconds, everything we'd built together was being consumed. Driving away, the gravity of it hit me. I just burned down our marriage, as thoroughly and irreversibly as I had her studio. Tears streamed down my face, hot and relentless. I kept driving, a hollow ache settling in as I realized there was no going back. Unexpectedly, I got a notification. The fire had spread from the studio to the back porch, creeping dangerously close to the main house. Firefighters arrived just in time to save it from total destruction, but not before the entire structure suffered severe smoke damage. It would need extensive repairs before it could be lived in again. I checked into a motel 90 miles away, paying cash to avoid a trail. After turning off my phone, I collapsed on the bed, exhausted and numb, and fell into a dark, dreamless sleep until noon. When I finally woke up, my phone was flooded with missed calls and texts. From Chloe, from Ella, even from the sheriff. Ella's perspective. As I stepped out of the Uber and spotted Ethan waiting outside the restaurant, my heart raced with a strange blend of nerves and excitement. His eyes took in my little black dress, the sheer tights, the high heels, lingering on me with an appreciative gaze. I felt a thrill, something I hadn't felt in years. I'd spent hours at the salon, perfecting my hair and makeup for this moment, wanting to feel a kind of anticipation I hadn't felt in years. Ethan greeted me warmly, his smile igniting a spark I didn't expect. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen, desired. This was going to be a night to remember, a break from my life, a taste of something thrilling and forbidden. Seeing Ethan's reaction boosted my confidence. I greeted him with a gentle kiss as we made our way to the bar. Settling onto the bar stools, I caught his gaze trailing along my nylon-covered legs, and I felt a thrill rush through me. We exchanged smiles as he ordered our drinks, and I discreetly switched off my phone, not wanting any interruptions tonight. This was a one-time experience, and I intended to savor every second. The chemistry between us was undeniable. Our conversation flowed naturally, like we'd known each other for years. I found myself reaching out, touching his arm, and flirting in a way I rarely did, even with Liam. For the first time in a long time, I felt free to fully embrace my confidence and enjoy being desired. After our second drink, the hostess informed us that our table was ready. Dinner was delightful. Each bite, each glance, each laugh pulling me deeper into this moment. When Ethan leaned in and asked if I still wanted to spend the night with him, I answered by teasingly placing my foot between his legs. His smile widened as he took my hand, and we left, heading toward the pre-booked hotel room. As the elevator doors opened on the 14th floor, reality hit me for a brief, sobering second. Thoughts of Liam flashed through my mind. Sensing my hesitation, Ethan gently pulled me close and kissed me, tenderly but with intent. In that kiss, all thoughts of my husband faded. Tonight, I was here, with Ethan, ready to embrace the thrill of this experience. In the room, he wasted no time, his hands finding the zipper on my dress and easing it down. The dress slipped off and fell to the floor as he quickly shed his own clothes. Spinning me around, he admired me, his gaze intense. He unfastened my bra and laid me on the bed, moving with a confident, deliberate touch. The experience was deeply sensual, thrilling me in a way I hadn't felt in years. Kneeling before him, I admired his physique, and he quickly slid my pantyhose down, asking me to put my heels back on, saying he found them irresistible. Throughout our time together, he covered me in soft, lingering kisses, his skill surprising and captivating. Fleeting thoughts of Liam tried to surface, but I pushed them away, grounding myself in the man in front of me. When he locked eyes with me and whispered, "I love you, Ella," the unexpected words sent a rush of emotion through me. It was a strange, exhilarating feeling that moved me to tears. We made love several times that night, each time as passionate as the last. When morning light filtered softly through the curtains, he kissed me tenderly, caressing my hair. "Ella, I meant what I said last night. You're incredible, sensual, beautiful. I think I love you. I want to spend more time with you. Can we see each other again?" Apprehension gripped me as I tried to process his words, torn between the excitement of the moment and the weight of what I'd done. I responded gently, "Ethan, last night was incredible, and you're a wonderful man. But I'm married, and I can't do this again. This was a one-time thing, and I'll cherish the memory. You were amazing. I enjoyed every second with you." "Ella, please," he replied, his eyes pleading. "Before you say no for good, just think about it. Your husband doesn't need to know. I can make you happy, truly happy. Just consider it." I gave him a soft smile. "I'll think about it, but for now, this is all I can offer." I kissed him deeply, letting him hold me one last time. As he embraced me, I surrendered, torn between my feelings for Ethan and the reality of my marriage. If it weren't for Liam, I knew I'd be with Ethan in a heartbeat. But Liam was my husband, and I could only hope he'd forgive me for what I'd just done. After breakfast, Ethan offered to drive me home. On the way, I turned on my phone, which I'd kept off since the previous night. The screen lit up with dozens of missed calls and texts. My stomach dropped as I saw the messages from Liam, each one hitting me with a fresh wave of guilt and shame. Tears welled up as I realized he must have been suffering while I was with Ethan. Just as we entered my neighborhood, my phone rang. It was Chloe, her voice frantic as she asked where I was. I reassured her that I was almost home, but her next words sent a chill through me. There had been a fire at our house. She said they'd been trying to reach me all night, but my phone had been off. My concern shifted to Liam, who, according to Chloe, was missing. No one knew where he was, and he wasn't responding to any calls. A knot formed in my stomach as I promised to call her back as soon as I got home. When Ethan turned onto my street, I saw the fire truck and police cars in front of the house. The front looked intact, but my heart raced as I got out of the car, hurrying toward the firefighters. I didn't even notice Ethan following until he placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. One of the firefighters stepped forward. "Are you the owner of the house?" "Yes. I'm Ella Harper," I replied, barely able to speak. "Well, Mrs. Harper, we managed to save the house itself. Only the back porch took some damage, but I'm afraid you won't be able to stay here until the smoke damage inside is cleaned up." Most of the fire was concentrated on a small studio out back. "It's completely destroyed." My legs buckled as the weight of his words hit me, and Ethan caught me, helping me sit down on the curb. "My studio? Is it really gone?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes, ma'am. I'm afraid it's all gone. We're investigating the cause of the fire, but in the meantime, a police detective would like to ask you a few questions." I forced myself to stand, then walked toward the back of the house, numb with disbelief. Just as I reached the charred remains of the studio, Sergeant Taylor caught up with me, his expression serious. "Mrs. Harper, do you have any idea what happened here?" he asked, watching me carefully. I took a shaky breath, struggling to keep my composure. "No, I wasn't here last night, and I have no idea what happened," I said, though deep down, I felt a gnawing suspicion that Liam had done this. "Are you her husband?" Sergeant Taylor asked, turning to Ethan with a suspicious glance. "No, just a friend," Ethan replied, his face coloring with embarrassment. I could feel the sergeant's skepticism as he turned back to me. "And where is your husband, Mrs. Harper?" "I don't know," I said, my voice shaking. "He's not answering his phone." The sergeant's eyes narrowed. "And where were you last night?" A rush of dread washed over me. "I was with Ethan," I admitted, aware of how damning it sounded. "Are you and your husband separated?" the sergeant continued. "No, we're not separated. We were happily married," I stammered, hearing how hollow my words sounded after admitting I'd spent the night with another man. "Do you know where he might be now?" he pressed. "No, I really don't," I answered, my desperation growing. "He isn't responding to any calls." The sergeant gave a small, skeptical nod. "Well, we need to speak with him. If you do hear from him, please give him my number." He handed me his business card, and as I took it, a sinking mixture of anger, fear, and guilt churned inside me. Anger over the loss of my studio and everything I'd poured into it, but also fear about Liam's reaction. I needed to find him, to understand what was happening, and somehow talk this through. I called Chloe, clinging to the hope that she might know something. "Chloe? Honey, do you know where your father is?" "No, Mom. I haven't heard from him since last night." "Why didn't you stay with him like we planned?" she asked, her voice trembling. He threw me out, Mom," she said, her voice breaking. "He said I was no longer his daughter." Hearing her words was like a punch to the gut. Liam saying something like that felt unimaginable. I walked into the house, and the reality of the damage hit me immediately. The walls were blackened with smoke, and a foul, burned odor clung to every surface. Living here was impossible in its current state. I decided to gather a few clothes and essentials, at least enough to get by for a few days. But when I entered the bedroom, I froze. My closet was empty. Every piece of clothing, every pair of shoes, all of my personal belongings, gone. My pulse quickened, and a wave of panic surged through me as I realized the extent of the situation. I rushed to my nightstand, hoping to find my wedding rings, but they were gone too. The sharp sting of regret hit me. Why had I left them behind? If Liam had seen the rings lying there, he might have thought I'd abandoned him, and our marriage. Frantically, I searched through the house, hoping to find anything of mine that hadn't been taken or destroyed. But every room was empty of my things, as if I'd been erased from my own life. A dreadful thought crossed my mind. Had Liam destroyed everything? In a rush, I ran to the studio's charred remains to search through the debris. Among the ash and rubble, I could make out fragments. Partially destroyed photo frames, remnants of clothing, all the things that had once held memories of our life together. The reality was undeniable. Liam hadn't just accepted my absence. He'd erased everything that tied me to this life. My hands shook as I called Chloe, my voice breaking as I explained what had happened. Everything's gone, Chloe. He took everything. I could barely get the words out, my mind reeling with grief and disbelief. Ethan, hearing my distress, immediately offered me a place to stay. But he was the last person I wanted to see right now. I politely declined, feeling the full weight of what I'd lost settle around me. Explaining that I needed time alone, I asked Ethan to leave. He looked hurt by my abruptness but nodded, leaving me there to face the wreckage of my choices. Regret washed over me, and I couldn't help feeling bitterness toward him, though I knew deep down that the real blame lay with me alone. Desperate, I called Chloe, my voice breaking. Chloe, I think I've lost your father, I sobbed. Mom, don't say that. Dad loves you, she replied, her voice trembling with worry. Honey, he burned everything. My clothes, my paintings, my studio. He's left me with nothing, not even a place to stay. I whispered, barely able to speak through the tears. I've hurt him more than I ever thought possible, and honestly, I don't blame him. What I did is unforgivable. I should have talked to him instead of going on that date. We could have worked things out, but I was selfish and now he's gone. If I were him, I wouldn't take me back either. What am I going to do? I have no home, no clothes. Mom, don't blame yourself entirely. I share some of the responsibility too, she said, her own voice thick with guilt. You can stay with us until the house is repaired. Tears streamed down my face as the full extent of the damage I'd caused sank in. It's not just the clothes, Chloe. It's everything, my artworks, my paintings, the sculptures. 30 years of marriage, 2 decades of creations. All of it, gone. I feel like I have nothing left. I broke down openly, sobbing so hard I barely noticed the concerned glances of neighbors. Just then, my phone rang. I fumbled, my hands trembling as I saw the name on the screen. Liam. Heart racing, I managed to answer. Liam? Is that you? I choked out. Hi, Ella. How are you? His voice was chillingly calm. Liam, please come home. We need to talk. No, Ella, he said firmly. I know everything from Chloe, yes. She's your daughter now, not mine. You're both dead to me. This might be our last conversation. Liam, please don't say that. I love you. You should know that. The studio is gone. Did you do this? His voice was unyielding. No, Ella. You did this with your betrayal and deceit. When I saw your wedding rings discarded and knew you were with another man, you died in my heart. What you did is beyond forgiveness, and Chloe's involvement is something I can't comprehend. We're finished. I'll be meeting with the lawyers on Monday to start the divorce. Please, Liam, I cried. Can't we talk? Work through this? You can't just throw away 30 years. Ella, we are talking. But I'm not the one who threw it all away. You did that with your betrayal. No one on this earth could accept what you've done, let alone forgive it. This is our last conversation. You'll be able to reach me through my attorney once you get the divorce papers. Goodbye, Ella. Liam, please, don't hang up. I begged, but he was already gone. The call ended, and with it my entire world shattered. I was left standing alone, broken, in the ruins of the life we'd built together. Chloe arrived just as I ended the call with Liam. We embraced each other, crying over the loss that now felt so final. We couldn't stay in the wreckage of my home while the fire and police conducted their investigation, so we headed to Chloe's house. When we arrived, Chloe pulled Jake aside and explained everything. Shock flashed across his face as he tried to process it. When he learned his wife had arranged a date for her own mother with another man, he was appalled. his face hardening with anger. "Chloe, you set up a date for your mom with someone else, leaving your dad home alone?" he demanded. "How did you think he'd ever be okay with that? What kind of husband lets his wife go on a date with another man? Is this what you're planning to do to me when we're older? Betray me, like your mom betrayed your dad?" He shook his head, disgusted. "Your dad was a good man, and you two were his whole world. What you've done. You've ruined him, pushed him to do things he'd never dream of. I can't believe you could be so thoughtless. Right now, I need time to think. And having kids with you is on hold until I figure out where we stand." Chloe's heart sank, stunned by the harshness of his words. She hadn't expected Jake's anger or his refusal to understand the depth of her mother's loneliness. To her, it had been just one date, a single evening after 30 years of marriage. But the real issue, she saw too late, was the end of her parents' marriage, her father's heartbreak, and her mother's shattered happiness. Soon, she realized, they would all have to face the consequences of her actions. 5 days later, I returned to the house to assess the damage. I decided not to file an insurance claim, not wanting to open up more trouble. At my meeting with the lawyer, I made it clear. The house was mine, non-negotiable. Ella could have half our savings but no alimony. If she resisted, I'd sue for adultery, exposing her affair with her daughter's friend's father. The divorce papers were already moving through the system. I also asked the lawyer about possible criminal arson charges. But without an insurance claim, it wouldn't likely proceed unless I filed a false report. A neighbor who knew Chloe must have called her when she saw me return home. I was standing in one of the rooms, surveying the smoke damage, and looking out the window at the charred remains of the studio. Strangely, I felt a dark satisfaction looking at that pile of ashes. Just then, I heard the front door open, and Chloe's voice echoed through the empty house. "Dad? Dad, where are you?" I didn't respond, instead focusing on the damage, still feeling the sting of betrayal. Moments later, Chloe found me in one of the bedrooms. She rushed over, wrapping her arms around me. "Daddy, I'm so sorry. Please forgive us. We love you," she sobbed, her voice desperate. I pulled back, looking at her with a mix of pain and resignation. "Chloe, I can't forgive either of you. I've already told you not to speak to me again," I said, pulling away from her embrace. "Please, Chloe, let me go and leave me alone. You say you're my daughter, that I have to forgive you. But you're no longer my daughter. You're just another person who broke my heart. Now go." "Dad, please," Chloe cried. "Mom needs you. She's living with us, and she misses you terribly. She cries all the time and wants nothing more than to apologize. Please, just come to our house and see her." "Never," I replied coldly. When she went on that date and stayed with another man, our marriage ended. She even left her wedding rings behind, sealing the end of it. "It's over, Chloe. Both of you can reach me through my lawyer. I'm getting a new phone and number today. Now go home and be with your cheating mother. Are you really willing to throw away 30 years of happiness with Mom?" "Me?" I replied, my voice heavy with resentment. "I'm not throwing anything away. Your mother threw away those 30 years the moment she took off her rings and went to her lover. You and your mother destroyed my happiness. And for that, I will never forgive either of you. Now, get out of my house." For the second time, Chloe ran out of her childhood home, tears streaming down her face. Her father's words, disowning her as his daughter, were devastating. Even years of therapy would never erase the pain of those words. The following day, Ella received the divorce papers, the reality of her actions sinking in fully as she realized her affair had shattered her marriage. She tried to reason with Liam, went to counseling, attempted every possible way to speak to him, but all her efforts were in vain. He'd severed all contact with both her and Chloe. In a surprising move, Jake eventually reached out to Liam, expressing his own anger and disappointment over their actions. The betrayal had made him reconsider having children with Chloe, and they entered couples counseling, trying to salvage what remained of their marriage. Ella, still hoping to return to their home, soon realized the divorce made it clear the house was no longer hers. She received half of their savings and $3,000 in monthly alimony for 10 years, a sum Liam had initially fought but ultimately agreed to. Forced to build a life on her own, Ella moved out of her daughter's home and into a small apartment near the city center, taking a job at an art gallery to get by. The life of artistic freedom she'd once enjoyed was gone. No more hours spent in Liam's beautiful studio. No more lake views from the windows he'd gifted her. Work now filled her days, leaving little time for creativity or reclaiming the life she'd known. Every trace of luxury, comfort, and marital happiness had vanished, all because of one reckless night with another man. She realized she would never have enough tears to erase the hurt she'd caused with that single mistake. Liam, her husband, her once loyal partner, would never speak to her again, and learning that he'd disowned their daughter was a pain she couldn't even begin to process. Chloe was devastated by her parents' split and the realization that her father had disowned her. Her guilt and heartbreak weighed heavily, and she soon fell into a deep depression. Desperate to save her own marriage, which had started to crumble under the strain, she sought help from a therapist. Meanwhile, Liam repaired the house, made his court-ordered payments, and then sold it, severing the last physical ties to his old life. Months later, Ella returned to what had once been her home, clinging to a sliver of hope that maybe, somehow, they could reconcile. She knocked on the door, and a young woman answered, a kind smile on her face. "Hello, can we help you?" the woman asked. Ella's heart pounded. "I'm looking for Liam Harper. Is he here?" "No, he sold us this house and moved on. He was very kind." "Are you Ella?" "Yes," she replied, feeling her heart sink. "Did he leave anything for me?" "He did," the woman said, handing her an envelope. "He asked us to give this to you if you ever came by." Ella accepted the envelope, her hands trembling. "Thank you," she whispered, forcing a smile through her tears. "Enjoy your new home." Back in her lonely apartment, Ella opened the letter with shaking hands. The words were sharp and final. Letter from Liam. "Ella, 30 years. I once believed I was the husband you needed, but clearly what you wanted was a circus, not a partner. You found what you wanted outside our marriage, so congratulations on that. Those 2 weeks you pretended to be the loving wife again. I see now it was only the calm before the storm, a prelude to your grand betrayal. While I was planning a special night for us, you were out with someone else. You didn't just break us, Ella. You obliterated us. I've done us both a favor and disappeared. Don't try to find me. I'm starting over in a place where your face and even our daughter don't exist. Consider our home another casualty of your selfishness. I sold it, and maybe the new owners can finally rid it of the stench of betrayal. You want closure? Consider this letter your final goodbye. Here's to your new beginnings, Ella. May they be as fleeting as your loyalty. The man who once loved you. Ella thought she'd cried all her tears, but as she read the letter, fresh sobs racked her body. She hugged her knees tightly, her heart breaking all over again. The thrill and memories of her night with Ethan were now empty, overtaken by regret and profound sorrow. At 52, she faced the bleak reality of a life alone. She had traded a lifetime of comfort and love for a reckless moment of pleasure, and now she was left with nothing. But Ella didn't know the final chapter of Liam's story. Late one night, just before he was set to leave for Ecuador, Liam tracked Ethan down. When the door opened, he stormed in, his face a mask of barely contained rage. Ethan took a step back, stunned. Who are you?" Ethan stammered. Liam's voice was icy. "I'm the husband of the woman you thought it was fine to pursue." Ethan tried to justify his actions. "Listen, I thought she was okay with it. She never mentioned she was. That things were still serious with you." Liam's face hardened. Months of pain and betrayal boiled over, and without a word, he pulled out a crowbar, his anger taking violent shape. The encounter was quick and brutal. By the time Liam left, Ethan's life had been drastically altered, his expression etched in terror and pain. Before heading to the airport, Liam gave him one final warning. Liam delivered one final warning to Ethan about the dangers of getting involved with a married woman, then left. By the time Ethan reached the emergency room and reported the assault, Liam was already en route to his new beachfront apartment in Manabí, Ecuador. 2 weeks later, detectives learned that Liam had left the country and realized they couldn't pursue him unless he returned. Even if they tracked him down, Ecuador wouldn't extradite him for an assault charge. Ethan, meanwhile, endured a painful recovery. Weeks in the hospital, months of grueling physical therapy, and a face forever scarred by the 25 stitches that reminded him daily of that fateful night. His old life was shattered, and he knew he could never reach out to Ella or Chloe again. The price he'd paid for betraying another man's trust had left permanent marks, both physical and emotional. Back in the States, Jake nearly left Chloe, unable to reconcile her betrayal of her father with the trust he needed in their marriage. Counseling eventually helped her recognize the full weight of her choices, and she vowed to never again betray her husband or family. Jake, still cautious, waited 2 years before agreeing to have children, needing that time to rebuild his faith in her. True to his word, Liam cut off all ties with Chloe. Her actions had forever cost her his affection, a painful lesson she carried in her heart, with regret as her only companion. When she and Ella learned of Ethan's assault, guilt washed over them, adding to the remorse that had already haunted them. They realized just how deeply they had miscalculated, foolishly believing that allowing Ella one indiscretion would somehow preserve happiness in their family. Instead, it had shattered their lives beyond repair. The absence of a husband and father brought enduring sorrow to both women, a heavy burden they would carry indefinitely. Overwhelmed by sadness and aging, Ella never met another partner. She led a life filled with loneliness and regret, haunted by the dreams she'd once had of growing old with Liam, surrounded by grandchildren. Those dreams faded to memories. After Liam left the country, he stopped the support payments, leaving her financially strained and forcing her to work to get by. Tears became a nightly ritual, a stark reminder of all she'd lost. As for me, I now have over $750,000 from selling the house and my savings from the last 3 decades. After buying my new home here in Ecuador, I'm looking forward to a peaceful and comfortable life. The locals appreciate a generous American, and I enjoy the company of the young women I meet. 6 months after that night, sitting on the beach with a cold beer and looking out over the water, I had a realization. Divorce is a part of life. Sometimes it's fine to part ways, fine to be on your own. But what's not fine is staying where you're not respected or cherished. And that's one situation I'll make sure I never find myself in again.